Before we moved to Phoenix in 2017, or as my tween son likes to say, before I dragged my whole family across the country to live in the desert, we owned a house in Rhode Island in a neighborhood called Edgewood, right by the ocean, just south of Providence. It's a beautiful three-story Victorian with a huge kitchen, big yard, and one of those places where actually when you think about it, you don't really ever feel like you own it. What you feel is you're part of this amazing legacy. You're privileged to be there, and it's your job to hold it in trust and pass it on to the next generation. So when a squirrel took up residence in the eaves outside my teenage daughter's window, it wasn't just her complaints about not being able to sleep that impelled me to act. I read online very quickly, as you would, just how much damage that squirrel could cause. Fire, if it chewed through the wires, pestilence, if it pooped all over the attic, which I was pretty sure it was doing. And really by the end, it would be lucky if the house was still standing. That was the impression I got from online. It was really helpful. City were less helpful in terms of giving me a path of action to get rid of the squirrel. The city just made it clear that I needed to be humane and the squirrel needed to come out alive, which is fine by me. So I tried first, as I always would, passive aggression. So I took from the kitchen some Crisco and smeared it on all the downspouts outside the house, on that side of the house. The reasoning being that the squirrel wouldn't be able to get a grip on the downspouts as it tried to climb back up to its home. It wouldn't be able to get there, so it would seek somewhere else to live. That didn't work. So the next thing I did was I thought I would try and scare it with my humanness. So I'd throw open the window, I would lean out, I would yell, just war cries of various kinds. And for the first few times, it was very satisfying as it scuttled away. But after about 4 or 5 times, it just didn't seem to have any make any impression. So I would throw open the window, I would lean out, and there the squirrel would be just a couple of feet away, calmly munching or working on whatever he was doing. So I thought I needed to take it up another notch. And I read that you can use a water gun with a little bit of cayenne pepper in, and if you spray the squirrel, that will kind of irritate and it will reinforce your message that they're really not welcome there. So I got one of Leo's squirt guns, put in an extra dose of cayenne pepper because I felt this was a pretty obstinate squirrel and he wouldn't necessarily get the message, and filled it up with water and went up to confront the squirrel. Threw open the window, out I leaned, there was Mr. Squirrel, pulled the trigger, and what happened was that it turns out if you put a lot of cayenne pepper in your squirt gun, it actually blocks the firing nozzle. What it doesn't do is block the plug at the back, the reservoir where you put the water in. So when you pull the trigger and the water can't go out through the nozzle, it actually comes out back through the filling hole, and I can vouch from this experience that it is true that cayenne pepper in water is an irritant, and it does make you not really want to be there anymore. I couldn't really see the gleam of satisfaction in the squirrel's eyes, but I could sense it, and I don't speak squirrel, so I don't know what the squirrel's word for karma is, but I felt like that's what he was saying, and certainly that's what my kids said to me later that day. So I did what I should have done in the first place, talk to my friend Chris, who knows about these things. And he had a squirrel cage, which he said, you borrow my squirrel cage, it works fine. There's a little pressure plate, put a little peanut butter inside, squirrel will be drawn in by the peanut butter, step on the pressure plate, gate closes behind him, pick up the trap, take it away, you're golden. So there are a few hiccups along the way. First morning, the plate of peanut butter was gone, licked clean, and the trap was empty. Second morning, went down and it had worked, the trap had shut, but inside the trap, it wasn't Mr. Squirrel, it was a skunk. So that was a little bit of a hiccup, but dealt with that. Then the third morning, success. There was Mr. Squirrel in the trap. Put him in the car, drove him to the nearby park, let him loose. But the hiccups weren't over because as I let him loose, he ran like an arrow, directly towards our house. And pretty sure he was back the next day, because next day, ran the trap again, and next morning there was, I'm pretty sure, Mr. Squirrel. People say it could have been a different squirrel, but I could tell by how angry he was that it wasn't just at me he was angry at himself, because he had allowed himself to be trapped finally. Called Chris again. I said, well, I've got him, and it didn't work last time. He said, well, the key is you've got to take him across water. So I drove 5 miles from the house, across the Providence River, went to the east side of Providence, dropped off Mr. Squirrel, brought the cage home, and I was done. So this is a story that I could tell, and I have told, as a story of persistence, focus, the virtues of responsible home ownership, and the importance of standing one's ground. But I've learned a little bit more since then, I think, about the impacts of perfectionism and rigidity of thought, and of putting property rights above the interconnected web of which we're all a part. And so now I really wonder how the squirrel would tell it.